The Texans got another steal, re-signing a pretty big player that I was surprised they didn't do earlier, but this could also mean that they might go a different direction in terms of depth at this position. Definitely an interesting move. I feel like if they were going to re-sign him, it was going to be earlier in the offseason, but everything worked out. Got him back for another year. Didn't have the biggest role with the Texans last year, but a good run-blocking kind of guy that you need to put in there, especially when Stover and Schultz were kind of battling injuries. I know Stover got hurt later in the season, and then Schultz, we kind of just have question marks about him and his game. But if you're new to the channel, very close to 1,000 subscribers, hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with all Texans news. I've been really appreciative of all the support on the channels. Thanks to you guys, Texans Digest has been possible, but just this close from a huge milestone. So hit that sub button, as we're trying to get to that 1,000 sub mark. In terms of the news of the day, Irv Smith is going to stay in Houston. He was here last year as more of a third, fourth string tight end, and it was a good move for what his potential on the Vikings was just so good. And then he had that knee injury, and then kind of just went to the Bengals on a what if contract. He played there for a little bit, had a couple good runs in terms of his stats, 115 yards, 12 games. Mainly, again, used as a blocker. That's what the Texans used him as last year. No stats in terms of what he did last year. I'm pretty sure he caught a few balls, but I could be mistaken. Overall, this is a good move for the Texans. I mean, it's a little bit underrated, but it also makes you think about the NFL draft and how does this impact what the Texans want to do. Now that they have kind of three tight ends, it's interesting to think, will they draft a tight end? It's just like, that kind of makes me think, I know it's a third string, Irv Smith, but at the same time, we saw a similar situation with linebacker earlier this offseason and them getting E.J. Speed. Again, I love Speed. I think he's a great run scheme kind of guy, but his pass coverage has been known to be not very good. As far as Irv Smith, He's on the other side of the ball. So having more depth at tight end and having this amount of draft selection, 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, do you invest higher draft capital on a tight end? I don't think so. I've seen some people in the comments saying, hey, they might go with a Gunnar Helm in the 3rd round. Now that they've re-signed Smith, it's just a little bit uncertain to me what they're going to do at the tight end position. I know Schultz isn't going to stay here for the long term. They just drafted Stover, who I personally think can take over as the full-time tight end 1. It's just Schultz's contract right now is really a chunk of change, and honestly, I would rather kind of reconstruct that if they could. But overall, looking at Irv Smith, it really does draw some head scratchers in terms of, does this affect the game plan? Let me know in the comments as far as, do they still take a tight end? Is it later in the draft? Maybe they take one with that 7th round pick, take a chance. I know a lot of people are not sold on Dalton Schultz being the number 1. Are they going to implement a 2, maybe 3 tight end system? We've seen the Rams kind of do that with Colby Parkinson and then a couple other guys just cycling in and out in terms of Tyler Higbee. But it's just, for me, I'm not too sure what the tight end position is going to look like. It's a lot of uncertainty in terms of, they need a receiver, they need offensive line help, and that'll be the first. We'll just take a suggestion. 1st round, they take a tackle. 2nd round, they take a receiver. 3rd round, it's a guard. 4th round, it's a defensive tackle. 5th round, it's a running back. And again, this is all hypothetical. But say if they got all their positions there, I think that's pretty sound, right? First 2 picks should be a tackle and a guard, just because there's not much depth at those 2 positions. You can get a lot at receiver later in the rounds, whether it's Tez Johnson, Trey Harris somehow falls, or again, there's a lot of depth, even Kyle Williams. So there's a lot of depth at receiver. And when looking at tight end, that was kind of supposed to be filled in the 3rd and 4th round, and according to a lot of people in the comments are like, yeah, I would love to get a tight end. Tight end seems like a pretty good need. And that was one of my top 5 needs. But honestly, I know Irv Smith doesn't kind of push the needle as much in that big regard to the gap. But again, impressive run blocker. He will serve as the Houston's tight end 3 most likely, maybe tight end 4 to Brevin Jordan. But I like Irv Smith. I think he, in terms of the tight end room, this is kind of pretty stacked in terms of looking at what the Texans have. They got Dalton Schultz, Cade Stover, Brevin Jordan coming back off injury, and Irv Smith Jr. So, honestly, you could probably trade Schultz if you want to. I personally think that contract is way too big. They don't utilize him enough to be a security blanket. Like, the tight end is supposed to be the check down, the last resort, and I just don't think that's what it's used as for at least the Texans offense last season. Schultz, a lot of when he was open, he got the ball, but I feel like the tight end could be utilized a lot better. And if they're going to go with a 2 tight end set, whether that's Jordan and Brevin Jordan's more of a pass catcher than a run blocker, which is why they probably re-signed Irv Smith. But looking at the future of this team, I really like what they can do, and they could get really creative with some looks as terms of what they have, right? You could have Schultz and Stover you could have Schultz on the right with Irv Smith, and then Cade Stover could be the fullback in the backfield. I know he's not that fast, but again, you can play around with it. Irv Smith's a very good athlete. He can go in the backfield. He can go on the line, and that's what I think we'll see a lot more of from the Texans. A lot of more single back setups, 2 tight end right, 1 receiver left, 1 receiver right, or 2 receivers, whatever the case may be in terms of those maybe RPOs we could see. There's a lot the Texans could play around with here, and we don't know what the offense is going to look like yet, but I do like the possibilities of how this is shaping out in terms of, I know it's just 1 signing, I know it's a re-signing, but this kind of raises some eyebrows for me at least, because although it may seem like a nothing, it just doesn't seem like the biggest move, and it's not. But bringing in more depth at a position only makes me think, okay, they're probably not going tight end in the draft as number 1, and then number 2, they probably need a lot of depth at tight end because they're probably going to rotate with Brevin Jordan and Dalton Schultz as the 2 pass catchers, and then they'll have Cade Stover, who can be a pass catcher. He's more of a blocker, but he's a pass catcher as well. You could have Stover and Irv Smith, the kind of more the blocking guys to do the dirty work up front. And Irv Smith, he's in there. He's in there a decent chunk of the time, but just not normally the guy to go out for a route. He can very well do that, but that's the flexibility you have at the tight end room, and utilize that. If you're Nick Caley this season, utilize, just like last year you did with the Rams. I mean, there were so many times we saw them in 2 tight end sets. Tyler Higbee, just the amount of tight ends they've had, even in the past, just tight end. The 2 tight end sets that I saw were pretty crazy from that team. And then the run-first heavy styled team that they were with Kyren Williams, that could be the Texans. It could be they draft the running back in one of the first 3 rounds, and it's just run. I don't have a problem with that. And you draft a couple offensive linemen in the draft. You look at the picks that they got right now. Go offensive tackle. Take a guard in Donovan Jackson. Get maybe a receiver in the 3rd. Running back in the 5th. Defensive tackle 3rd. I mean, whatever you want to do. There's so much flexibility here. And that is another key thing that the Texans could do, is after the draft, maybe bring in another tackle or guard or one of the receivers or positions that you missed in the draft. You can address that after the draft with the amount of free agents that are still out there, in terms of just still depth pieces that if you're not happy with what you came up with at the end of the draft, you have that flexibility to look at other options. So it's definitely an interesting situation the Texans are in. I know it's a crazy breakdown in terms of a backup, if not 3rd or 4th string tight end. It is an Irv Smith, but it is Texans news, so you got to bring it up, and you got to break it down and speculate a little bit on what does this do to the draft search. Are the Texans now saying, all right, tight end is kind of off the board, we'll go tackle, guard, receiver, tackle, D-tackle, whatever the case may be. It's an interesting search, and I think you can wait on a running back in this draft. You can wait on a receiver in terms of 2nd, 3rd round, unless Emeka Egbuka falls in the 1st round. But overall, good stuff for the Texans. Irv Smith has re-signed with the Houston Texans on a 1-year contract. Big fan of Irv Smith. Let's see if he can do a little more in the pass game. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and what this team's going to do for the future. But Good stuff for the Texans. Going to see a lot from this team. And it's been Mike Zanetti, Texans Digest. Hit that sub button if you're new. Trying to grow the channel as much as possible. Posting every day for you guys, at least trying to. Up until the NFL draft. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, hit that sub button. But we'll see you in the next video.